Good evening. It's Wilbert Cook again, Hand Up Recovery Homes, here to talk to you about gun violence reduction in the west side of Chicago. It's been a very busy day, fruitful day in the neighborhood. We look forward to moving around and getting to our target area as best we can and as quickly as possible. I was looking forward to having a guest, a very dynamic speaker I grew up with in the neighborhood, but he didn't make it. He was on his way this morning, and I guess it took too long for us to start. And he didn't make it, so I probably got busy like I did. I was slow getting here, to be perfectly honest. We're trying to expand services and enhance what we do in all areas, recovery, support services, outreach, and to move the organization toward even creating more temporary and permanent housing for people. So we got a lot on our plate, and we got to enhance our ability to improve job opportunities. So been in discussions, beginning discussions with 3 different groups: catering company, a soap company, a cookie company that also does pies, and a few other things on how we could develop a structure whereby we could do some social entrepreneurship, where we take the nonprofit organization and start actually doing job creation. So keep us in your good spirits, send all positive energy our way. Any information on negotiating tips and how to put that together, please let us know. They're very good people, though. All the business owners are great. And 2 I met at the farmers market downtown. One I've been talking to for over 5-6 years now. The other one we've been talking pretty regular over the last 2.5 years. So we've developed a great rapport. So we look forward to doing that in the future, expanding our nonprofit to create more jobs, and not just service jobs with all the community, but other jobs that help support the organization, help create jobs for people in different areas. And a big part of that is we'll be working with young entrepreneurs. So we will be encouraging those that develop in the organization to consider entrepreneurship as a viable option for employing yourself and helping to employ others in the community. Because one of the greatest struggles we have in the west side of Chicago is the high unemployment rate in every neighborhood, every section of the zip codes. And that fuels the opportunity for more illegal economy, whether it's selling cigarettes, whether it's selling weed still on the street instead of going to the dispensaries, whether it's still selling all other forms of narcotics and other pharmaceutical drugs or mixes of pharmaceutical drugs in the narcotics. So we want to deter that partially by putting forth more viable employment opportunities. And then we want to create better housing, and housing wrapped around in support services. It's no longer good to just put 30 people in an apartment or apartments, and then they need various services and there's none around to be found. Also we're talking about in the future having any affordable housing we have some kind of stores, food chain involved. So we have some pretty elaborate plans on how to move forward to continue this progression of reduction of gun violence, but also all violence, and most importantly, the economic depravity all over the west side, North Lawndale, East West Garfield, Austin, that helps fuel the underground. I don't even know if that was the term when I was a kid, the underground economy. That's a main economy in the American pipeline now, is all the illegal activities that go on alongside of the legal and or instead of the legal. So, and everyone's enjoying the money. because the car dealer has not turned down too many drug dealers, just told them they can't bring 10,000 plus to the dealership, and I think it may have gone down during the whole terrorist crisis. But the reality is we have to give more legitimate, viable employment opportunities to struggling people and struggling communities if we want to deter the violence, the carjackings, the armed robberies now that seem to be ticking up across the city. A report over from the neighborhood in North Lawndale. We're still praying for and with the families of all those shooting victims a couple weeks ago, almost 3 weeks ago today. We have been on the blocks doing some prayer around the area. We plan to do some more prayer Friday throughout that area, along the blocks where there was some shooting and the near blocks, surrounding blocks. We also plan to continue our efforts to discourage the illegal distribution of drugs along the Pulaski corridor, in particular Van Buren and Pulaski, Congress and Pulaski, Gladys and Pulaski. We plan to be out trying to discourage the use, abuse, and the selling of those drugs along that corridor, in particular this Friday night. So, from 9 to midnight, we're going to take the night shift and try to make sure it doesn't kick up a notch, but that it goes down a notch or two. We're going to try to get people in supportive services, whether it's direct them to the hospitals for treatment, direct them to the treatment facilities for treatment, whether it's direct them if they got underlying mental health issues to the triage centers, or get them in contact with people on the hotlines for the triage centers on the west side. And then if we can get some into housing, we will. Others, we will try to talk to them and help them not continue to spiral down throughout that night, in hopes that when morning comes, we'll be able to get them in other facilities that open on Saturday mornings. The toughest part of helping people in the evenings at night is the majority of the service, multi-million-dollar service institutions are closed. Let's either go to the 24-hour, 7-day-a-week detoxes if there's any beds left, or to the hospital. I'm finding out, even though they say triage centers and counseling available, most of them are not available Friday nights, or a limited amount of space and opportunities. And even one hotline closes down when you need more hotlines on a Friday night. One actually closes down and transfers all calls to the other West Side Hotline Triage Center. So, we got work to do. Been in discussions with the Chicago Police Department last Wednesday. I wasn't here. I was in a meeting with people that helps do recommendations for COPA and the other advisory councils with the city. And what I recommended, that police be sensitive to the lives of our young folks, even if they've been shot. Don't let them continue to bleed out while you run around putting tape up over the crime scene. You let them bleed out. And if medical help comes, fire department or ambulance, move those police cars out the way and let them up the block, because somebody's life could be saved. When you disrespect the lives of our hurt teenagers and young people, or even elders, to that extent, the community is going to have a hard time forgiving you. Because when every minute counts, every TV show on earth discusses every minute counts. Every news station has discussed for 30 years of inappropriate ambulance and police responses the importance of every minute to save a life when there's been a trauma, gunshot, accidents, all of that. Every minute counts to save a life, save lives from potential debilitating recoveries. So people realize if you're not trying to save a life, you don't mind watching that life die. But it's also an insult to watch you run with urgency with pieces of tapes to tape off crime scenes while you had no regard for the life that may be slowly leaving the here into the hereafter before you, and no respect of the emergency personnel on scene, making them go another block, half a block, up and down the roadway in order to get to an injured person. See, it's those visuals that destroy relationships in the community, and it has to be restored. And I'm going to always fight for what's right. And the sad part is, just like sometimes it's the innocent person that's been shot that's bleeding out, but when police come on the scene, they sometimes seem to act like all of them maybe deserved or were entitled to be hurt. And a lot of times that's not the case. But their lives not valued like it should be. I've never been in another community where officers don't try to save lives, don't try to make sure emergency personnel immediately get to attend to those injured. Unfortunately, all over my community throughout my lifetime, I've witnessed that. And it drives my passion to do more. Sad part is too many of us accept it as that's how it is. No, it doesn't have to be that way. But because we accept being treated less than, we are treated less than. So as we promote gun violence reduction, we promote the value of human life, all human life. And one of our greatest appeals to people who are in alternative lifestyles when it comes to the economy is that you are a valuable person in society and you deserve to live a less fearful, stressful life. And you deserve to have a good job, decent job, and a much better way of life. And we appeal to the fact that in the drug trade, there is a limited lifespan, either physically or freedom. Most of the time, you're going to give up one or the other or both over a long period of time. So we try to encourage them to realize they can live a better quality life and they can stay free. Something I tell a lot of young people when I talk to them in the community, in and out of the church, with or without good jobs, with or without street hustles, I always try to tell them, stay alive and stay free. And it's a shame I would have to try to remind so many young people that that's important to me for them. It's important to me for them that they stay alive and stay free. Because it's too often the norm that one or the other will happen. And that's part of why gun violence is so prevalent in poor communities on the west side of Chicago. They're trying to stay alive. Or they fighting for some economic freedoms that unfortunately really does not come with the illegal lifestyle. But they fighting to survive in America, a capitalistic country that generally in poor communities only provides an illegal economy. Zaps the life out of the legitimate economy, deliberately zaps the life. 60 years with the lack of economic development on the west side of Chicago, and you keep blaming that on the riots of 68 when King was assassinated is ridiculous. And I don't know no human being that's thinking that would believe that's the real reason. It's a conscious design to restructure the city of Chicago. Even Ray Charles could see that. Stevie Wonder has seen that across America. The visually impaired now can see that. because they know when they go to other areas of the city, there's so much more being offered to them. Roadways, jobs, opportunities, restaurants, businesses. And it's a shame that all the great institutions, politically, religiously, social service agencies, everybody has managed to find ways to survive and thrive while these communities were either being put through further decay than the riots. They have continued to destroy and depopulate those communities since '68, the part no one wants to talk about. All the sturdy gray stone buildings, 13th and St. Louis to Central Park, that were leveled in the late 70s, early 80s for a development plan that never occurred. Well, it occurred about 10 years ago. 30 years later, 35 years later, they finally rebuilt that block. So we had to deal with the decay in the community for 30 additional years beyond what originally was cited. The other side of the street is a wonderful community park. Those housing units have never been restored. Love parks, but when you got so much homelessness on the west side of Chicago, we could use a few more apartments. Or for the working class people and even those who are struggling with how families of 4 and 5 children, it would be nice to have a nice home to walk into with a nice backyard instead of a huge yard and limited housing opportunities. It's interesting. So when I look at gun violence, I look at the whole parameter of what creates, causes, and contributes to gun violence. It's not a monolithic problem just because people have guns. And as people who defend the right to bear arms, to conceal and carry mention, guns don't kill, people do. Well, I suggest people sometimes would not consider killing if they weren't in such horrendous living circumstances, that their lives were devalued so much that their self-esteem couldn't rise, or that their fight to have esteem in the street life, in a community full of poverty, causes them to fight for territory, the city streets, to hustle drugs and other paraphernalia, as if they're ever gonna own the city streets. They may own a house on a lot of land, but the city streets are always gonna belong to the city. And as it's been shown in every gentrified area of Chicago, the old Skid Row, where Oprah Studios sat for years and they tore down for the McDonald Corporation, where there used to be nothing but slums and rundown businesses and factory buildings going in decay, in the old stockyard and wholesale houses. They now have a whole new set of trendy businesses, condominiums, loft apartments, and they got rid of all that crime that came with Skid Row. Now they got high-collar crime they don't discuss, but all of the negative effects of Skid Row is no longer noticed along that corridor between Halsted and Ashland and Madison and Monroe. A whole new world is down there, down by the university. So then as they move past the United Center, all the ravages of all the negative activity that used to take place along Madison, Monroe, Adams, through that corridor has primarily been removed, because they've the influx of middle class, upper middle class Chicagoans and suburbanites coming back to the city. And as they move toward the east end of East Garfield. Things have gotten better. So it's amazing how much better our city functions for those who have legitimate money, no matter what other money they have, as long as they have legitimate, recognized capitalistic money, how much better the system works. But also it's sad how much we perpetuate the poverty in America in these poor communities, but we let all the drugs, pharmaceuticals into the streets for them to sell. You know, it's no conspiracy, it's a reality. And we need to put viable economic opportunities in the hands of these men and women and watch the dynamic of violence change. Watch the communities get better. Give them the chance to rebuild the community brick by brick. Give them the jobs on the construction company. So once again, my clarion call to my union rep turned mayor, voted in as mayor. You believe in the collective bargaining agreement for all employees. We need community benefits agreements for every poor community in America. We can no longer afford to let these communities, in Chicago in particular, perish because of a lack and people to continue to die at the numbers they are because we refuse to give them parity in economics, equality and opportunities for jobs, and actual equality in getting the jobs, if not a competitive advantage, because they live in those communities already. So we need to make sure that a fair percentage of jobs go to these individuals living in Garfield, North Lawndale, East West Garfield, Austin, and all future developments. If it's city funds involved, there should be a community benefits agreement. If it's county funds involved, there should be a community benefits agreement. If it's state funds and if it's federal funds, there should be community benefits agreements designed to make sure the people living there now will be able to afford to stay, but most of all, be able to thrive legitimately in a capitalistic society and not be pent into illegal activities to survive. Therefore, more violence and more death and destruction be peddled in these communities when we can add life, liberty, and vitality. We need to really show compassion for people. This is the day, this is the time. As King said before he died, if not now, when? And in many instances in these communities, we still asking, if not now, when? So when will all the good moral Christian people, all the good moral ethical people, where will all those with more than enough financial wherewithal care enough to actually build up these communities? This has been a wonderful opportunity to talk to you all about the realism of gun violence. It has a lot of issues, but a lot of the substance abuse, the mental, emotional decay of that community is a direct result of poverty. The systematic commitment to continue poverty until they gentrify these communities. The systematic willingness for our society to allow drugs in to flood these communities, allow illegal pharmaceutical drugs to stay in these streets until they gentrify them, to tear down healthy, vibrant buildings and not redevelop them until gentrification is prepared. It is utterly ridiculous in a country that's the greatest in the world, with the greatest minds, that's moving toward AI, not to care about the human capital in North Lawndale, East West Garfield, Austin, and all other poor communities in Cook County, south side of Chicago. This has been a hand up saying that gun violence has a lot of tentacles. Let's reduce them all, but most importantly, poverty and unemployment as a means to save lives. Thank you for your time. It's been a wonderful 25-minute segment and dialogue with Chicagoland.